Hello and welcome to another edition of Another Book Review. This week I'll be reviewing John Scalzi's novel, The Kaiju Preservation Society. I'll talk very briefly about the author, go into a spoiler-free overview of the plot, talk about what I liked about the book, what I didn't like about the book, who I'd recommend the book to, and finish off with what I'll be reading for next time. I've reviewed some John Scalzi novels in the past, Red Shirts as well as The Collapsing Empire. I'll leave links below if you want to check those out to get a little bit more on John Scalzi's background. Very briefly, he's a very prolific science fiction writer. He's been writing for about 15 years now. He's oftentimes nominated for awards, pretty prestigious science fiction awards. This novel, I believe, was nominated for the Hugo, but did not win the year it came out. Um, the book, if I was going to give an elevator pitch, is essentially what if Jurassic Park, but with kaiju instead of dinosaurs. So think um, Pacific Rim or Godzilla. In this world, there is a world with kaiju, and the main character, a character named Jamie, is integrated into or initiated into this society that basically works to keep the kaiju due to their size. Can be very destructive forces from mixing with contemporary society, urban centers, and things of that nature in our world. The plot is really about something comes up that is a threat to that separation, and Jamie and the characters have to, and the rest of the team have to work together in order to make sure the kaiju do not cross over into our world and cause damage there. Spoiler free, that's the plot of the book. It's a very fun ride. It is relatively breezy, relatively short. In the afterword, it's only about 225 pages or 250 pages. John Scalzi calls this book kind of his like a pop song, and I think that's really an apt description. It doesn't take itself very seriously like other things that John Scalzi has written. There's some metatextual pointing at like how ridiculous this premise is and this kind of lack of science behind some of these things and kind of the ridiculousness of the science. And Scalzi knows this and is kind of telling you, the audience, hey, I know this is ridiculous, but that's the premise and it's fun. And John Scalzi has a sense of humor that's very specific. You either kind of like his sense of humor or you don't. I find myself liking his sense of humor, and so I enjoyed this for the ride that it was. There's some fun set pieces in the book. Like I said, it doesn't take itself too seriously. John Scalzi's skills as a writer are such that you kind of get the setup and what you need to know about the book relatively quickly in terms of getting characters from point A to point B to point C. So I thought all that was good. I will say the book doesn't have too much of a character arc. There's not really anything like really deep about it. It's not really something I think you're going to think about very much after you read it. The character of who's kind of plays the role of the villain has something of a farcical plan, and if you think about it for too long, it falls apart pretty quickly. It's not really the most logical plan in the world. But I enjoyed it while I was reading it. I think that with Scalzi, I tend to like his more serious stuff. I found myself liking Red Shirts quite a lot. I liked Locked In. I liked Old Man's War quite a bit. I think the stuff that I don't like as much is when the balance between the work as far as being philosophical, which Red Shirts has some parts to it, has very, like I said before, very metatextual. All the characters are very soaked in pop culture references, and there is something of a divide between the people who are soaked in pop culture references and people who maybe aren't. It's maybe a little silly, the divide that he has in this book in terms of who is good and who is bad based on that. That was a little silly. And also just he has something of the Joss Whedon's concept of characters where the characters, especially the side characters, feel somewhat interchangeable. They have kind of interchangeable personalities, and they don't always stand out. In the past, I think he's done a good job of kind of making sure that you know who the main characters are by giving them certain traits to make them memorable. In this book, he does a little bit less of that. I think it was more of, hey, you're along for this ride, reader, and the focus is on the things that the characters are doing and the actions that are taking place, and you don't really need to worry so much about the character arc or character development. That was a choice that was made in this book, and I think it gives the book something of a propulsion. I think, though, it leads to a little bit more of a shallow read, and there are some things that are brought up in the course of the book. You're like, okay, I don't know where this is going or what significance this has, and sometimes it has significance and sometimes it doesn't. There's some asides in the book that are kind of questionable why he included them. They kind of slow the book down at some points. The legalities of entertainment on kaiju and the kaiju preservation I thought was kind of strange, but otherwise it's a fun breezy read, and I think people who enjoy John Scalzi will enjoy this. If you have never read John Scalzi before, I don't think I would have you start here. I still think, because it's a standalone book, Red Shirts is probably a good place to start. I think that does a good job of mixing the philosophical with kind of the meta. So it has this like playfulness to it. It also has a seriousness to it that's much more heavy than this book. But I think that also gives you kind of what I find to be kind of the fun parts of John Scalzi and his ability to kind of play around with genre a little bit. I also really enjoyed the Old Man's War series. I know for some people who don't like maybe military sci-fi, that maybe not necessarily your cup of tea. And Locked In, I didn't read the rest of the trilogy, but the first book I remember being quite good. Where I think John Scalzi falls into a trap. There's sometimes where you kind of feel the effort isn't always all the way there. In this book, for instance, from my understanding, John Scalzi is a pantser, and sometimes that pantser's disease comes out. And I remember this was there in Old Man's War too, where it's like one half of the brain is saying, well, this is a really cool idea, so I'm going to do it. And the other half of the brain that has to resolve the cool thing sometimes doesn't give a resolution that maybe is as satisfactory as it could be. And that happens a couple points in this book where you're like, oh, that's a cool idea for something. Let's do that. And then the satisfaction is not necessarily there where you're like, okay, well, you brought this back up just to do this thing. And it's not really quite as satisfying as maybe it could be. Otherwise, it's really well written. It moves at a good pace. It's fun to read. Would I have liked maybe a subplot to give the book a little bit more depth? It probably wouldn't have hurt. John Scalzi's politics are in the book too. He has kind of a certain political view, and so if you shy away from that political view and don't agree with it, that also, I don't think it's super heavy-handed, but it's in the book, and that may bother you, so just a fair warning there. But otherwise, if you like Scalzi and have read him in the past and enjoy his stuff, I think you'll enjoy this. If you haven't read him in the past, I would not start here. I'd maybe still start at Red Shirts. If you don't like his sense of humor, you're not going to like this book. And so I would recommend that you not read it. But otherwise, it's a fun book. Kaiju Preservation Society doesn't take itself too seriously, moves at a good clip. And if you're just looking something for like escapist, then I think it's a pretty good read. If you're looking for something a little bit more serious, it's maybe not that. He kind of hangs a lantern a couple times on how kind of farcical the concepts of this are in a metatextual way that I thought was fun. Other people may not think it was fun. And it's not a hard sci-fi book. And so that's what you're looking for. It's not for you. But if you want something kind of fun and breezy, like a pop song, as he says in the afterwards, I think it hits the spot. Next time I'm going to be reading Edenville. And until next time, if you've enjoyed this video and have not subscribed to the channel yet, please consider doing that. If you've enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, I'll have my Twitter link below. I also have the reviews to the Scalzi videos, the Scalzi book, that I've reviewed in the past for the channel. So if you want to check me out there, you can. Until next time, bye.